Can y'all see me? I know y'all can see me. What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode here on Get Inspired with Unique. My name is Unique, and yeah, for today we're gonna be doing a little bit of a live video. Well, not like a live video, but a video version of this episode on this podcast. So if you are listening to this on Spotify or Google or Apple, head on over here to YouTube so you can see my lovely face. Let me not be all corny or whatever. I am a little bit nervous because I haven't done this in a long time. Like, I would make a lot of videos all the time on YouTube when I was doing content of my hair and stuff like that. And yeah, I'll just show you all how I am wearing it today. For anyone who is familiar with me from my old YouTube channels. But yeah, this is how my hair is looking right now. It's nice and short and curly. I'm growing it back out, but I'm not gonna let it get too long. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get on topic with this podcast episode. So I did write down the talking points that I wanted to hit for this episode because I don't want to ramble too long and because I do have some place to be pretty soon. So let me go ahead and let you all know the timestamp. I like to do that in all my videos. It is currently Tuesday, September 19th of the year 2023, and the time is 1 p.m. here in Cary of North Carolina. So yeah, let's just dive straight into it. So in the last episode that I did for this podcast channel, I talked about how the best person to take care of the older future version of you is going to be the current present version of you. You know, you right now, you today. You are going to be the best person out here to take care of the future version of yourself. And there was a portion of that episode where I said one of the solutions to being able to take care of the future version of yourself was to nurture the present relationships you have with the people you love, and that doing this required effective communication. So that's where today's episode comes in. So the concept for this podcast stemmed from a really good conversation that I was having with someone who's very close to me. And I was pretty much confiding in them about how I used to be teased for being very quiet at one point in my life. And then as life went on and I got older, I sort of started becoming very talkative. And that just stemmed from the types of jobs that I had. You know, I did a lot of customer service related jobs. And a part of customer service is being able to communicate with a lot of people. You know, you're going to have people who want to talk, and then you're going to have people who they're not going to be in the mood to talk. And you really have to be able to understand how to communicate with different types of people on a daily basis. So if you're someone who's very quiet, then you kind of have to get out of that and you have to learn how to strike up conversations and things like that. So I've done Uber on the side going on 8 years, and I've picked up thousands of different types of people. And so I had to really learn how to communicate with all these different types of people. And I also have 10 years of experience doing video content on YouTube. So I used to interact with hundreds of thousands of different people, and I always had to try and tailor my methods for how I would communicate with people. Sometimes people would want you to, you know, make very long and drawn out videos and like really explain yourself. And then sometimes people just didn't really want you to do as much talking. They wanted you to just be brief and to the point. And so that just really challenged me. So I'm just saying all that to highlight the point of me being quiet at one point in my life and how that just changed over into me being very talkative. And it was just very challenging for me to try to navigate those two drastic differences in personality, you know? So I used to be teased about that. I used to be teased about being very quiet at one point in my life. And then I was also teased for being a chatterbox, just talking so much. And it really just hurt my feelings a lot at some points of my life because I felt like I couldn't win or lose no matter what I did. It's like, do you want me to talk or do you want me to be quiet? Like, pick one. So that just made things very difficult for me when it came to trying to become an effective communicator. And that's what I was talking about when I was having this very deep conversation. And somewhere in that conversation, I had also talked about how I felt when I wasn't being heard. Because a lot of the times when you're being teased, you're not really being heard and you're not really being understood. It's either people want you to just shut up and be quiet, get out their face, or just they might want you to conform to doing things the way they do it. You know, like if you're not cool enough to be with the cool kids or whatever, you're going to get ostracized. You're going to get judged. You're going to be looked at as the black sheep. You know, ain't nobody going to be thinking about you. So yeah, those are things that we talked about, and it gave me the idea for today's episode. And so I didn't know what I wanted to title today's episode. I didn't know if I wanted to title it My Struggles Becoming an Effective Communicator, or if I wanted to title it something along the lines of Listening to Understand. Are you being heard? So I might do like a mixture of the two when it comes to, making my thumbnail and then getting this uploaded to YouTube. But yeah, that's what I want to talk about today. And I don't want it to be too long, but I did want to make sure I at least, I wanted to at least make sure I filled you all in on like my thought process, where this is all coming from, because I always feel like stuff like that is important. So, and again, I do want to let you all know I wrote my talking points down. So if you see me like looking down every so often, it's because I got my stuff on my clipboard. So I'm trying to be a little more organized with this episode. So yeah, one of the first talking points that I wanted to bring up, I have 4 talking points. One of those 4 talking points was that everyone is born needing to learn how to communicate. And this is first done through crying until we learn words. And so I wrote that down as a talking point because in my mind, I feel like communication is just something that a lot of people struggle with. You would think it would be easy, right? But I don't think it is. And I think communication goes beyond just how you talk or just knowing words or whatever. There's a timing to it. You know, you got to know when to communicate. You have to be able to read the environment. You need to be able to, when I say read the environment, like people sometimes will say being able to read a room. Like you need to be able to tell if someone's pissed off with you or if it's the best time to say certain things. And then you have to just really make sure that you don't assume people already know the context of a circumstance or a scenario when you're talking to them. Like sometimes people just go around assuming that everybody is on the same page with things and that we all know the same backstory to a situation that's being talked about. No, like you shouldn't assume anybody knows anything. Ask a question and see if somebody is aware of a certain situation before you go into talking about it. Otherwise, you're just going to be wasting your time telling information to somebody and they're not going to have a clue what you're talking about. So you just have to make sure you're on the same playing field with whoever you're talking to. Are we all on the same page? Does something need to be explained to someone? Like, just don't assume, you know? Don't ever assume. So, yeah. Whenever we come into this world as babies, we don't have all of that information or those skills when it comes to communicating. All we know is crying, and that's how we communicate, and we let our mothers and fathers know that something's wrong. The second point that I wrote down is we then have to learn as well as understand the consequences of our methods of how we communicate. Some examples that I wrote for that would be not speaking up in advance about things that we need. For example, we all were little kids at some point in time, and let's say that there was a school project that was due, and we knew well enough in advance that the assignment was going to be due. But we waited to the last minute to tell our moms and dads that, hey, I need glue for this, I need markers for this, or whatever. That's communication, right? You have to let your parents know that you need these things. Why did you not tell them in advance? Why did you think it was okay to wait to the last minute to say something like that, you know? So you start to learn at a young age that, hey, like, you need to speak up. It doesn't matter that you know the words to tell someone you need something, yada, 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 yada. You can't just expect someone to miraculously just always have what you need at the last minute. That's not how it works. Communication also needs to be done in a timely manner. Like, you need to let people know about stuff in advance because there's this thing called life. So yeah, there is that. We have to start learning that. Another example that I wrote was being disrespectful in our tone to our parents versus our teachers versus our friends. And I also elaborated further on that point of saying knowing who we can talk back to and look cool doing it. When I wrote that down, I was simply thinking about how, like, when I was in middle school and high school, it was always cool for the kids to be disrespectful to the teachers. And even now in 2023, that stuff still goes on. And I think it's a lot worse now than it was when I was in middle and high school. But you wouldn't dare see none of those kids talking to their parents like that, especially if you were like me. You can't get away with doing stuff like that. And you know, people used to say like people who would have been anyone who's old enough to be my parent. So if you're someone who is in your 50s, almost your 60s, your generation, y'all probably witnessed teachers like actually like whipping you and hitting you and stuff like that if you were disrespectful and stuff like that. And then, you know, as time went on, teachers were not able to really discipline kids. So that has to be done at home. So kids pick up on stuff like that and they learn that, hey, I can talk how I want to talk to these adults or whatever. And it's just a flex, you know, because, you know, you wouldn't have that same vibrato when you're dealing with your parents at home. So you choose to do it at school. That is also a form of communication. I feel like there's a little bit of nonverbal or indirect communication when you're doing that. And the type of communication that you're sending when you do that is you're letting certain people around you know that, hey, I'm cool, I'm big, I'm bad, I'm brave, and I have a lot of confidence and I'm cocky and I can talk to these adults or these teachers however I want and ain't nothing gonna happen to me. You know, that's what you're communicating to a certain group of kids, especially if you're trying to look cool. So that's another form of communication. So that's another point that I had wrote down. The third point out of the 4 that I wrote down was trying to find a balance between talking too much, not saying enough, and feeling like some things are not worth explaining if you aren't going to even be heard. So when I wrote that point down, I kind of talked on it briefly already when I was mentioning about how I went through a transition in my life where I was very quiet at one point, and then I transitioned over into being very talkative. And it's just been very hard trying to find that balance sometimes, because I feel like for the most part, what I personally have noticed in life is people do like it when you talk, but people don't want you to go overboard when you're talking. You have to keep in mind to respect people's time. People definitely are busy. They might have someplace to be, someplace to go, and they don't want you to talk their whole head off. And sometimes people just have short attention spans and they can forget what the topic was if you go on too long. So you really have to find that balance. And like I said, like I used to get teased in middle school and high school because I was very quiet and people used to think something was wrong with me. And honestly, I can tell that it does make people uncomfortable if you are someone who's just very, very, very quiet, because I would imagine it can make people wonder, like, what's wrong with you? Like, why you don't want to talk to nobody? Did I do something? Like, whatever. Like, I don't know. Like, people just make opinions and judgments about you before they even get a chance to know you. And they do it a lot if you're quiet. And they'll do it when you talk too, like if you're very talkative. But I feel like they do it a lot when you're real quiet. And so you just kind of have to find that balance, especially when you're young and you're still in middle school or high school and you want to be able to fit in. You don't want to be the outcast. And you don't want to you just don't, you don't want to be teased. You don't want people to single you out and just not want to invite you to stuff because they feel like, oh, you're going to just make the vibe just very uncomfortable. And the same thing can sort of happen if you talk too much. And I don't know. I just feel like you just really got to find that balance. So again, that's why I wrote that point down. And then the last part, when I said feeling like some things are not worth explaining if you aren't even going to be heard. That's the part of the conversation I was telling you that I was confiding in the individual on, when I said that sometimes I just felt like I was not being heard. It is very, very, I don't want to say painful. I want to say it can feel very isolating and sometimes lonely to know that you're not really being heard. Like, you know how to communicate and tell people what you like, what you need, how you want stuff done, or just even communicating your feelings, your emotions, just your day, just whatever. And if you're putting in all this effort, if you're putting out all this effort to communicate to the people around you, and you're constantly being shown that we don't care about what you're saying, you're just blowing all that hot air out your mouth and nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear what you got to say. When that happens to you so many times, all right, so my camera overheated a little bit, so I had to go ahead and shut it off and let it cool down. So I'm going to pick up where I left off. I was saying, whenever you are constantly being ignored, or you're being shown that no one wants to hear what you have to say, or when you just feel like you're constantly being ignored and you're not being heard, I feel like that can push somebody to get to a point where they shut down. It can push someone to a point of just not wanting to talk as much, and you end up being a lot more quiet. And I feel like that is something that happened to me. That could be why I used to be very quiet, because I feel like when you're a little kid, kids typically are expressive. And like I said, that's why this was the first point I wrote down out of all four that I told you I was going to talk about. And I've talked about three so far, so I'm literally about to mention the fourth one. But when I wrote the first point of how everyone is born needing to learn how to communicate, you don't pick up on all of these social cues and these other forms of communication, and all these things that are involved with trying to effectively communicate and interact with other human beings. Once you start picking up on certain things, it starts making you twist and turn and change how you interact with the world. And so, yeah, if somebody is constantly ignoring you and making you feel like you're not being heard, that would definitely shift the way a child interacts with people around them. And I'm pretty sure that's something that happened to me. So yeah, again, the third point that I talked on just now was trying to find a balance between talking too much, not saying enough, and feeling like some things are not worth explaining if you aren't going to even be heard. So yeah, that was the third point. The fourth and final point I wrote down that I wanted to talk about was learning to be quiet, to let others talk, and listening to understand instead of just listening to immediately refute or challenge or argue with someone. I'm getting silent on that one because that is an area of my communication skills that I'm trying to work on. I don't know why I was trying to like figure out how I wanted to string that sentence together, but yeah, got it out. That's an area of my communication skills that I'm trying to work on. So that was just a mouthful, but just to read it out, like I think if someone is able to do that, that's a very strong area in that person's communication skills that everyone should have in this world. Like listening to understand instead of just trying to listen to find something to like nitpick about and shoot someone's opinion down on. Like everyone can have their opinion. Everyone can think how they want to think. Everyone can feel how they want to feel. Just make sure you're listening to understand. That's all you got to do. And for a long time, you know, for me, I don't feel like I did a good enough job of trying to listen to understand people. I would usually, like, whenever someone would talk to me, if somebody said something I didn't agree with, if I did let them finish talking, that sounds so bad if I say if I did let them finish, but I'm being for real. If I did let them finish talking, I already had all these like arguments in my mind or these objections that I wanted to just throw at the person. And so, you know, I heard someone once say that if you go into a conversation with someone with that mentality, are you really going to hear everything someone is saying? Because if your mind is heavily populated, or if your mind is full of all the things that you're just ready to get out, you're probably already mentally distracted with all of the arguments that you want to throw at the person. So you're not really going to have any room in your mind to hear whatever else they have to say to you, because you're just ready to go on the offensive and attack and argue. And I used to be that way. And I've been really trying to push myself to, you know, just listen to understand and just take in the things that I'm hearing. I've even been trying to have a balance with not talking so much and allowing people to, you know, ask questions, allowing people or allowing a little bit of silence in the dialogue or the conversation that I'm having with someone. So that silence can allow someone to take in what they heard. You know, sorry if it's getting real bright, like the sun's going in and out. But if you're just talking, someone's going to eventually tune out, and they need to be able to have a breather or have some type of a break between all of the words that you just said to them so they can like process it all. And that is an area in my life when it comes to that is an area of becoming an effective communicator for me that I've been trying to work on. I do think I'm getting better, but I know where that comes from. And I was actually talking about this in my conversation with the person that I was sharing this information with. Because of all of my years of making YouTube videos, I was doing that for like 10 years. Whenever I used to make a video, is that a snake or a lizard? That is so random. I'm sorry. There's like literally a blue-tailed, it looks like it's a snake, but I think it's a lizard. But it looks like its legs are so tiny, it could be a snake. That thing looked cool, but it kind of freaked me out. Anyway, I was saying that whenever I used to make my YouTube videos, I used to start out making my videos like real short and brief and to the point, but then people used to have questions about, hey, when you said this, what did you mean? When you said that, what did you mean? You didn't go into enough detail about this point that you made in the video. Can you make an update, or can you explain, or whatever? So when that kept happening over the course of time, I started trying to tweak the way I was making my videos and introducing them to the YouTube platform. And I feel like it helped me learn how to effectively communicate and explain things better. But that ended up transferring into how I talk to people in real life when I'm not talking to someone across a computer screen or through a video. And that presented a new challenge for me, because what I started doing was I was trying to anticipate everyone's questions when I'm talking to someone like in real life. And it would turn into me not letting someone even ask me a question because I'm hogging all of our talking time. Like, it's just me doing all the talking, because the way it's been explained to me from one of my close friends is that if they ever do let me just finish talking, they usually end up having all their questions answered. Like, there is not one question in their mind that hasn't been answered because they took the time to just let me talk. But your average person is not going to usually just let you talk and ramble like that unless they like you and unless they're like really into what you're saying. The average person is usually going to try to cut you off or try to interject before you even have a chance to really get everything out and explain what you wanted to talk about. And so what I learned is that it's actually okay to allow someone to have questions and say what they need to say to you. You know, there's nothing wrong with having interruptions and stuff. Having dialogue is healthy when you're communicating with people, because, you know, like, take it back to the classroom, whether it's high school or college. If a student has a question and they want to ask the teacher, hey, teacher, when you said this, what did you mean? Da, 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 da. If the teacher just keeps rambling and keeps going on, what if they keep going on and they never truly answer the student's question, you know? So dialogue is super important, and it helps to keep both parties engaged, you know, especially the student. It helps to keep the engagement up. And so, at least when you're dealing with someone in person. Now, if this is like a video or whatever, yeah, you're going to have to try your best to anticipate all the questions that someone has, because you won't get that feedback in real time. You just won't. You'll just have to hope that you answer every question that you can think of and get it all in one video, because it takes time to make videos. It takes time to go back and create more content. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but if your life is busy, you may not always have time to create a video for someone because they didn't understand something. So that's why I was always trying to anticipate everything and put it in one video. And after 10 years of doing that, it kind of just, I feel like, I don't want to say it warped my communication style, but it really had a big influence on how I talk to people. So I really just wanted to talk about this in today's episode for this podcast, because I talked about how effective communication is going to be one of your solutions to nurturing your present day relationships when you're trying to take care of the future version of yourself. And to connect the dots even further, when you get older in life, you will start to realize that the people that you love and care about are going to be a lot more important than just trying to make money and stuff like that, because people come and go all the time. And if you love someone and if you care about someone, you have to let them know. You need to show them with your words and with your actions. And you need to make time for people, because everyone's not going to be here every day. And one of the best ways to take care of your connections and nurture your connections is to be an effective communicator. And so I felt like it would be very important for me to dive into talking about this for this episode, because this is something that I want to work on, and I don't know if other people have had similar issues. I really, really do want someone to respond and let me know in the comment section down below if this is something that you've struggled with, or if you can relate, or if this is just like your first time hearing someone say something like this. But I did feel like there would be a lot of value in me sharing this with you all. And so yeah, I did tell you all in my last episode I was gonna make a separate episode talking about this, and so here we are. And yeah, that's it. I think I did pretty good. I hope the lighting didn't keep shifting. I had to keep readjusting my camera, so I hope it didn't shift every so often. Y'all, it is hot as I don't know what in this car. Okay, so I had to turn off my camera one more time because it did overheat. But the time is now 1:54 p.m. and we are now done with today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed everything that I talked about. I hope it made you think. I hope it inspired you to maybe change up how you talk to the people you love. I hope it maybe challenged you to just, I guess, connect with people on a different level. Just connect with people just differently, period. I really want this overall podcast channel to just really make people think about their life in a different way and just spark good conversations. Like, there's so much that I want to do with Get Inspired with Unique. And every episode that I put on this podcast, I want it to be meaningful and I want it to connect with someone. You never know what people are going through, and you might say something that could just inspire someone to look at their life differently or just think about things in their life differently. But this was really on my heart to talk about this, and so I'm just really glad that I finally was able to do it. Yeah. Feel free to go follow me on Instagram. The Instagram page is also called Get Inspired with Unique. And you can subscribe to this channel here if you want to see more content like this. I really do want to grow this podcast to become something bigger and greater than me. Uh, so, yeah, I'm super excited to do these episodes, and I like it when people are engaging and when people are listening. I haven't been getting as many comments just yet because, again, I'm still pretty small. I'm still trying to promote and grow the podcast. But the people who have commented usually have given me their feedback in person and have told me that they've been enjoying the podcast. So that's really nice. I really do also want people to interact in the comment section below, because the more you interact, it does help push my podcast out there to other people in the world, and it just it'll help my audience grow. And you never know, someone who needs to hear this, they'll be able to hear it and they'll be able to see it. So I don't really have anything else that I want to say, so I just want to go ahead and leave it here, and I hope to see you all in the next episode here on Get Inspired with Unique. You take care, enjoy your day, stay cool or stay warm wherever you are, because the season is changing. And thanks for listening. All right.